Good evening. Welcome to our 12th annual Visible Ink performance of works by MSK patients. The stories you'll see tonight were originally scheduled to be part of our live show last March. 2 weeks before curtain, COVID-19 restrictions forced us to postpone the event.
We have taken the stories from that show and adapted them into a virtual 2-act performance. You'll see Act 1 tonight and Act 2 next Monday evening. The pieces in tonight's show are performed by actors, singers, dancers, and musicians from film, television, and Broadway. In scenes where performers appeared together, we followed all COVID safety and testing protocols.
Visible Ink is free of charge to patients, funded by grants and donations. We hope you'll be inspired to support our work, which empowers patients to flex their creativity and find their voice. The writing can be in any form, on any subject, and need not be related to the experience of illness.
So sit back,
relax,
and enjoy the show.
Experienced mentors from every fold are there to help the patient get their story told. That's how we do it here with Visible Ink.
The words they are writing, the thoughts they express, promote their creativity, reducing stress. That's how they do it here with Visible Ink.
We share our patients' work in printed publications. Our funding comes from grants and generous donations.
Tonight we appear in a digital set to showcase all our writers on the internet. The actors are ready and in our employ. They're gonna give a show that you are sure to enjoy. So prepare to be so entertained that you won't want to blink. 'Cause that's what happens here with Visible. Not invisible, here with Visible Ink. Here with Visible Ink.
My name is Daphne Gregory Thomas, and my essay, I Don't Have Time for This, is being performed by actress Lucy Martin.
On a brisk December day, in the midst of going over a long to-do list, I was thinking about Christmas Eve. The menu for my aging father, who could only eat soft foods and would be coming on a day pass from his nursing home. How we would manage the dynamics of my youngest son and his wife, whose marriage was rocky. Shopping for my grandchildren's gifts. I was not thinking about the MRI I had taken hours before, a result of some pesky UTIs I had been suffering.
It's a nuisance quite typical for older women. But let's just check anyway.
And then, the phone call.
Hello?
Hello, this is Carol, the nurse from Dr. Andrews' office. Am I speaking with Daphne?
Yes, tell the doctor I went this morning for the MRI and to call me when he hears anything.
Well, he knows. That's why I'm calling.
To this day, I wonder why the first thoughts that came into my head were, wait a minute, things are busy enough. I don't have time for this. I had just settled my father in the nursing home, but he still needed daily visits. I had a big holiday dinner to prepare, and I had recently made reservations to attend the Women's March in Washington. I'd already purchased my pink hat. But we don't get to pick what we have time for. We get picked. And although one would like to believe that the rest of life will stop and wait a while so that the ominous outcome of an MRI can be attended to, it does not. Time or no time, this life-changing event would just have to find a way to fit in. Eventual diagnoses, weeks of consults, hours of surgery and rounds of chemo had to find their way around my father slowly dying, and my son and his children temporarily moving in with me. The only march with my pink hat I could manage was around the 10th floor at MSK. Some days I screamed and howled and pity-partied from the weight of it all. I longed to find something to steady me in the maelstrom. Then, it found me. A year later, after a visit to my surgeon, his nurse asked,
"I've been thinking, you would be really good at this. Would you be interested in volunteering for patients who need that I have walked in your shoes kind of support?"
At that moment, still in the throes of a fragile recovery and the continuing ambiguity of difficult family dynamics, I could not fathom how I would once again have time for this. But I agreed to go to a patient-to-patient volunteer training, then attend a panel to help inform doctors about how patients feel. Surprisingly, I found myself ready to tell other patients how I had walked in their shoes and was still walking, even after my life had been so rudely interrupted at such an inconvenient time. I found out that they did not have time for this either. I then talked to them about how I had learned that even when life foisted its other hardest moments on us in the middle of disease and treatment, we could still find a way to survive. I saw faces of those who were in beds I had once inhabited change, looking one way when I first entered their rooms and another when I left. I was able to give them a tiny dose of the only thing they needed: a little bit of hope. I was there to help them, but they too helped me. I soon came to realize that the things I resisted because I had no time for them were put there purposefully. If I just surrendered to what life picked for me, there was an answer for mostly everything along the way. Even though I was chosen for the long, hard slog of disease, I could also find joy and some very special people that I otherwise might not have known. That phone call several Christmases ago that brought me the worst news anyone could imagine also brought me an unexpected gift. It gave me time to learn that some of life's most valuable lessons could be found in every journey, even those that I just didn't have time for.
Hello?
Is this Assistant U.S. Attorney Mary T. Shannon? The T stands for Teresa, right?
It was late. He sounded drunk. Probably a cop that I'd met on a recent narcotic sweep, calling for a date. Now, normally, I might engage in this NYPD courting ritual, but I was too busy. It was January 1986. Rudy Giuliani was the U.S. attorney, and I was the newest member of his public corruption unit. After decapitating the mob and terrorizing Wall Street, he had turned his sights to New York City politics. Now, I lived in New York for 6 years and barely knew Ed Koch was mayor, but This was a plum assignment, and I would have to learn fast. Oh, my first investigation involved bribery at the New York City Parking Violations Bureau. It was a perfect starter case, and I dug in. Within a few weeks, I had audio taped the deputy director accepting a $5,000 bribe. I had him cold. He'd have to plead guilty. But before my investigation went public, the Queens Borough president, Donald Mannis, attempted suicide. Ed Koch ran to his bedside. After I arrested my bribe-taking deputy a few days later, the tabloids reported he was Mannis's bagman. Rudy was elated. He assigned 3 additional prosecutors, all men with more experience, to help me. They were sharks. I was chum. I needed to swim fast and deep to keep up. And right now, I needed to get back to work.
The T stands for Thérèse, as in Saint Thérèse de Lisieux.
The nuns must be proud. Where'd you go to high school? Stella Maris?
I knew Stella Maris was an all-girls Catholic high school in Queens, but this guy sounded fun. Maybe I had time for a little banter.
Never heard of her. Is she any relation to Roger Maris? I went to Bishop Gorman.
Where's that, Jersey?
Nope, Las Vegas, Nevada.
Rudy's got a broad from Vegas going after the King of Queens? Jesus, he's dumber than I thought.
And who are you?
Jimmy Breslin. You ever heard of me?
Even I knew that Breslin was the Damon Runyon of Queens. He'd written about nothing but Mannis for weeks. I devoured his columns, but they were filled with nicknames and overwrought metaphors. They left me confused.
Sorry, Mr. Breslin, we have a rule about talking to the press.
A rule broken by Rudy every day. I'm not looking for comment. I just wanted to meet the woman who's going to bring Donnie down. How much you know about Queens?
Everything I knew about Queens came from dating an Orthodox Jewish boy in law school. We would meet at Pastrami King on Queens Boulevard after sundown on a Saturday, and the counterman would say to him in Yiddish, "If your mother was alive, this would kill her."
I know enough.
And not if you think this PVB crap is going to stick.
Tell me what I don't know.
You said you couldn't talk to me.
I can't answer your questions, but nothing says you can't answer mine.
Cute. But answer me this. Did your daddy deal blackjack on the strip?
My daddy didn't deal anything. He worked for the IRS and went after the mafia.
It's in the blood. What do you want to know?
That first phone call was long. By the end of it, I knew that Mannis oversaw a system of corruption so pervasive that high school teachers had to pay their councilmen to become principals.
Mr. Breslin.
Jimmy.
Jimmy. Who should I talk to first?
Well, I ain't no cop. Figure it out. And keep reading.
In Sunday's column, Breslin declared himself a warrior in the battle against Queens' political corruption. In that column, and in more to follow, he described one bribe scheme after another, but he never named names. He left out just enough information to keep everybody guessing, especially the other prosecutors on my team. But he didn't keep me guessing. He continued calling and answering my questions. To protect his sources, we played 20 questions.
Jimmy, that lawyer at the funeral.
He needs a subpoena.
Everyone calls him Mike, right?
Except his Irish father. He calls him Michael.
I guess my next subpoena should be addressed to Michael Dowd.
Maybe.
As I predicted, the deputy pled guilty. Jimmy sat in the front row of the courtroom. I wore a plaid pleated skirt. In his column the next day, Jimmy mentioned me by name. And later, he called.
That uniform skirt was a nice touch for a girl from Vegas.
I always wear plaid when I'm doing justice.
Your daddy know what you've been up to?
Of course.
When you send him my columns, which I hope you will, you tell him Jimmy Breslin said you did good.
Thank you, Jimmy. I will.
She works hard for the money, so you better treat her right.
Hello, my name is Walter Schubert, and my story, Visitors, is being performed by Visible Inc.'s artistic director, Greg Kachajian, and actress Catherine Bogier.
A little bit icy. You're at 35 degrees and we'll slip down into the 20s.
She didn't have a lot of time. And I wasn't her only visitor that afternoon. The jackals of fear and despair, now close by, relentlessly attacked her spirit.
A little bit icy. You're at 35 degrees and we'll slip down into the 20s before we actually warm up by morning when the wind switches to the south. Dry weather right now. Here's the storm coming our way tomorrow. We don't know the whole side of it.
Hey, big bro. I'm glad you're here.
There's nowhere I'd rather be. In her suffering, she knew I would never walk away from my baby sister. I never had. 4 years younger than me, Maria had stage 4 inoperable lung cancer. We had always been close, and when we were too young, our father suddenly died. His passing devastated us. At 20 years old, I became the breadwinner, taking over my father's business. In time, Maria came to call me
My miracle man.
not because I perform miracles, but because I was a miracle. I had been diagnosed with melanoma stage 3C with a life expectancy of 18 months. And now, 16 years later, I had crushed the odds. I understood how she struggled with much more than just physical pain. I could empathize with the broken nature of her whole being. Mind, body, and spirit, her room moaned from a sheer heaviness of it. Now, nearing the end, she withdrew into her damaged self. In her misery, she became combative with caregivers.
Carlos, I told you an hour ago to get me another Percocet. Get me the Percocet, please.
Just days earlier, Maria had decided to stop the tortures of chemotherapy. It was leaving her too tired and too weak to enjoy anything. And that afternoon, she asked me,
Do you think I'm doing the right thing?
I told her that in life I'd come to expect pain, but that I believed that misery was optional. And whatever she decided, I was all in.
That is Alice Link, and those vehicles there are celebrating her 100th birthday. A Huntington resident for 75 years, Alice was born in Boston and raised...
Hey, how about some visitors?
Depends. Who's coming?
I don't know. Let's be surprised. Go get your coat and meet me out on the front porch. Hey, come here. Look, it's our first visitor.
Oh my God, his color is so beautiful.
Isn't it? Just look all around us. I mean, look at this gorgeous snow. It's just it's another welcome guest.
Look, the tree is waving at us.
So, what do you think about all of our visitors?
I think they're wonderful. It's funny that you see them as visitors.
Of course they are. I mean, life surprises us this way. It's constantly sending us new things. I mean, everything that comes our way is just another visitor. The bird, the waving branches, the snow. I mean, here it is now, and then poof, it's gone in an instant.
What a wonderful way to look at life. You know, I never really thought of it that way, but it's so true.
Well, I never really saw life that way either until after my cancer arrived. And then after a while, I came to see my cancer as just a visitor too.
I'm so heartsick. I could have been a better mother. I just desperately want to watch my boys grow and get married, and I want to hold my first grandchild.
Maria, none of us knows what tomorrow holds. And as for you not being a good mother, I'm sorry, that is just so not true. Look, none of us were born with a manual on how to live life perfectly. Life is messy, it's painful, and we often hurt people that we never had any intention of hurting. But the truth is, we always did our best with what we knew at the time. Look, I know it's a cliche, but every NFL coach would love to have the tapes to Sunday's game before Sunday's game.
That's a good one, Mom. I'm so glad you're here. Your perspective is always so wonderful and uplifting. You never let me down, big brother. I don't know how I would get through this without you.
I have always loved you just the way you are. Maria passed away 8 weeks later. The memory of that afternoon is forever in my heart.
What a nice way to see life. And I never really thought of it that way, but it's so true.
Marijuana, pot, weed, grass, ganja, 420, Mary Jane, whatever you call it, it's all yours. It's not for me. I grew up in upstate New York. One of my best friends lived on a dairy farm. They owned 2,000 milking cows and a few bulls, where I was introduced to a game called Slap the Bull. But that's another tangent. My first recollection of marijuana was in my early teens when kids would exclaim,
"When I turned 18, my dad said that I get to smoke weed with him."
Some of us set lofty yet realistic goals up there in cow country. Marijuana just never appealed to me. But fast forward a few years, I watched a friend suffer through a terrible bout with cancer. I was in the military at the time and had the same illness, albeit a different subtype. Near the end, what had not been cut from my friend's lungs were tumors. And he said it felt as if he were drowning all the time. It seemed counterintuitive, but the only thing that helped was smoking or ingesting marijuana. It induced hunger and at least made him think that he could breathe. He would put it in his butter and use it as spread on toast. Every time I visited, he offered a hit. Soon to be medically retired and prone to random urinalysis, I always turned him down, though I resolved myself to one day try weed with Rich, if he were still alive. Sitting with this man as he drowned in his own blood on his couch made some things in my life seem silly. Soon after leaving the Marine Corps, and thinking it would help me medically, my fiancée procured a small sandwich bag of pot and a bowl. She has a knack for getting what she wants. It's alarming. Anyway, we sat together on the couch in our living room. I wanted to do this right. Go straight, Cheech and Chong. I had tried it once in my teens, but I didn't inhale and then nothing happened. This time, I wanted to get good and stoned. It was like not knowing if you could swim and then belly flopping into the deep end. That's what it was. A 420 induced belly flop. My fiance hit that bowl like a pro and showed me what to do. Smoke filled my lungs and I coughed it all up. Not to be deterred, I hit that bowl again and again. Near immediately, time stopped. And I was levitating. And telepathic. Amazing! I transferred my thoughts to my fiancée, and I heard her thoughts. What ho! Panic set in. I was having a heart attack. My heart raced. Oh my God, there's a SWAT team at the door. The government's listening through the VCR. We don't even have a VCR, man. Did I just call my fiancé man? Oh, bad trip. How long had I been high? 5 minutes? 5 hours? 5 days? I thought this junk was supposed to relax me. My heart palpitated and beat in my neck. I was itchy and twitchy. My whole body itched. And then it happened. He came from across the room. Time stopped. The earth stood still. I watched as this massive, brown, furry, bushy, rodent squirrel ran from the corner of the kitchen across the living room floor and then jumped headfirst into the door while doing karate and vanished in a time warp crossing the singularity. I turned to my fiancé and said, "Holy shit, did you see that fucking squirrel?" One day while my fiancé was at work, I conducted my second experiment and smoked the rest of the pot alone. Big mistake. Unbeknownst to me, my daughter had left her headless Elsa doll on the table in the living room. Smoke filled my lungs, and once again, time stood still. I looked up, and there she was, the scariest thing I have ever seen. The headless demon! I stared at this creature while the flame from the candle reflected as fire from the table. After that, I decided I'll stick to tea. Herbal will be just fine.
Hi, my name is Maria Alfano. My story, which happens to be one of my favorite memories, is titled Moon River. It's being performed by an amazing cast. Actress Karen Wexler, dancer Matthew Steffens, and singer Javier Ignacio. I hope you enjoy watching it as much as I enjoyed writing it.
Moon River, wider than a mile, I'm crossing you in style someday. Oh, dream maker, you heartbreaker, wherever you're going, I'm going your way.
Saturday nights were always my favorite time. My dad worked long hours during the week. He left before my sister and I woke up and came home long after we went to bed. But Saturday night, he was ours, with the added benefit of knowing he didn't have to work the next day. So while my mom cleaned up and did the dishes, we would head into the parlor and get ready to play some games. The games didn't have a name because my dad made them up using things we had around the house. Sometimes he would take his fedora and place it upside down in the middle of the floor. Then we would take a playing card and hold it between our thumb and pointer finger and flip it into his hat. My dad was pretty good, probably from playing since he was a kid himself. But my sister and I would collapse into giggles as our cards sailed through the air in every direction, hitting everything but the fedora. Some Saturday nights, it was the empty milk bottle on the floor, and we pitched pennies. The best part of these Saturday nights didn't happen until after my sister and I went to bed. We lived in Jersey City, and we had what they called railroad rooms. No hallways, just one room after the other, like railroad cars. As I came through the front vestibule, I entered the parlor, then on through the bedroom I shared with my sister. As I continued, I entered the kitchen, and then my mom and dad's room. Because the rooms were small, my parents' hi-fi stereo found its home in our room. The hi-fi was my parents' one luxury. They loved listening to music. On Saturday night, it was Johnny Mathis, Jimmy Roselli, and maybe a little Sinatra. As my sister and I snuggled into our beds at the end of the night, my mom hung up her apron, and my dad turned on the hi-fi. He stacked the albums on the turntable with their favorite Saturday night songs. Then we heard the distinctive drop of that first album, and their night began. The one song I always remember them dancing to was Moon River. It must be 60 years ago, but whenever I hear that song, I'm transported back in time. My parents stepped close to each other and began to dance, slowly, around our small kitchen.
Two drifters off to see the world. There's such a lot of world to see. We're after the same rainbow's end, waiting round the bend.
Even at our young age, we could see how in love they were. The bright lights in the little kitchen were dimmed under the pretense of them keeping us from falling asleep. In the shadows, I could see Mom and Dad holding each other and slow dancing. My dad, wearing his faded chino work pants, his hair always with the perfect DA. He was a tall man, over 6 feet. What a stark difference from my mom, who was less than 5 feet tall. Somehow this difference in height worked. They fit together perfectly. My mom would be in her house dress and slippers, but my dad looked at her as though he was looking at a beautiful movie star. She was his world, and he was hers. My sister and I listened to song after song as we drifted off to sleep and our happy dreams.
We're after that same rainbow's end, waiting round the bend.
Only now do I realize how young my parents really were. They were kids themselves as we watched them dance on those Saturday nights. They eloped when they were just 17 and had 2 kids by the time they were 20. So while they had all the responsibilities of adults, they were still 2 very young people deeply in love. As time passed and they grew older, they would always make time to turn on the radio and dance to a song or 2 in their kitchen. They slow danced for the next 52 years. In their hearts, always 2 teenagers deeply in love.
Hi, my name is Catherine Porter, and my essay, The Story of Kiki, Dexter, and Vladimir, will be performed by actress Peyton Hughes.
The day my world came crashing down with a cancer diagnosis was also the day I gave my left kidney a name. Just referring to her as my left kidney didn't seem personal enough, so I called her Kiki. Seeing as Kiki was about to walk the plank on September 11th, 2017, I felt she deserved an explanation. With candles lit and soft piano music in the background, I started talking to her in nightly meditations. I had always liked the name Kiki ever since I had the opportunity to sing with one of my favorite female singers, Kiki D, in the late 1990s. Her name sounded happy as a name could sound. Perfect for a kidney, I thought. Kiki, I have some good news and some bad news. It's time for you to be evicted. I'm sorry. It's not your fault. You've been an exemplary kidney, a filtering genius. But for my continued desire to live another day, we're going to have to part ways. I tried to cheer her by telling her she was finally going to have her Little Mermaid moment and get to see the outside world. I visualized her with suitcases in hand, traveling to all sorts of exotic places, watching sunsets while sipping pina coladas with little umbrellas in them. You are so lucky. What other kidney ever gets to do this? I started to get us both prepared for her trip. And what does every good trip need? A packing list. First on the list to go into her bags was what I called my negativity stash. Every breakup, insecurity, old hurt, fear, loss, even my ex-husband got shoved into Kiki's Louis Vuittons. I meditated on the transfer of these bad vibes from my body going straight into her suitcases. I then took it a step further and invited friends, family, and even strangers to give me their challenges and anxieties, and they gladly handed them over. Into those suitcases they went. At 9 a.m. on September 11th, I burst into the OR, charged with energy and purpose. Make sure you take the right kidney. I mean, the correct one. It's the left one, right? Don't fuck this up. The anesthesiologist acted quickly, and the only thing I remember are my last words trailing off into the distance before I was out cold. I love you, Kiki. Goodbye. Hours later, I woke up feeling like the world had been saved from Armageddon. With her departure, Kiki took our woes away. We were unburdened, free. When Kiki left, my superhero right kidney, Dexter, stepped up to the plate, swooping in like Mighty Mouse to save the day. In my pre-op chats with him, I let him know how grateful I was he was going to pick up the slack. We made a deal. I would take care of him, and he would take care of me. We shook on it. Since I had bladder cancer that ended up in my kidneys, checkups involve a cystoscopy, a scope of the bladder, which, you guessed it, I also named Vladimir. Vlad and I also had quite a few chats. It was mostly me talking, thanking him for being such an ace bladder, until I looked up at the screen during my first post-operative exam and saw this beautiful array of what looked to me like a garden of blooming flowers. Tumors. How could something so mesmerizing be so menacing? How did they get there? Fortunately, I wasn't able to look them in the eye and get an answer, but even if I could have, they probably would have just shrugged their shoulders and said, "Listen, lady, we don't want to be here either, but this is where they told us to go." I'm happy to report that I don't have any more stories about any of my other organs, but I have named every single one of them. There's Bella, the heart, Luna, the lungs, Tommy, the tummy, Uda, the uterus, Virginia, the... You get it. I've even named my vagus nerve, Elvis. I talk to them all lovingly and encouragingly. In my mind, I like to believe that they're listening and that maybe, just maybe, their cells behave just a bit better, knowing they're being given some loving attention. There's studies that prove this to be true. So why not try it? Name your organs and have a chat with them. Tell them you are healing. Tell them you love them and make a deal to look after each other. Just like me and Dexter, say you will always have each other's flanks.
Hello, my name is Sebastian Gillen, and my piece, An Indelible Mark, will be performed by actor Bart Mather.
When I was in middle school, I was generally a pretty shy kid, but whenever a teacher touched on human biology or anatomy, I felt like this was my time to shine. I mean, this was my specialty, and I had the proof. I distinctly remember on more than one occasion standing on a chair, pulling up my shirt, proudly displaying off the pale bifurcating line that ran 2/3 of the way around my abdomen, declaring manfully that I no longer possessed a gallbladder or a right adrenal gland. I also distinctly remember, around the same time period, being so overwhelmed by a book report presentation that I ran from the room crying. This goes to show the extent of the transformative empowerment I was able to find through my old wounds. Now, in retrospect, I could see how it might have seemed strange, or at the very least, perhaps not the most common reaction, but it simply hadn't occurred to me that other people might have had different negative relationships with their own scars, not to mention the things that caused them. Not for me, though. To me, they are triumphant proofs of the pains that I've lived, of the wounds that did not kill me, undeniable testimonials of my strides and struggles, and I wear them with tender pride. On my right forearm is a scar of a different sort, one that I hold in even higher regard, one of my own choosing. It's a simple tattoo. A stark, bold arrow crossed by 3 shorter lines. The symbol for Memorial Sloan Kettering. The crossbars stand for 3 things: education, treatment, and research. To draw the clear parallels, those aspects correspond with the tenses of our perspective, past, present, and future. Now, I think it serves as a great reminder of the need for balance, remembering to take a breath and be in the moment, for each additional moment is a blessing. But also, to remember the heartbreaking, staggering beauty of what has come before, and to prepare for the countless bouts of tears and laughter yet to come. I got it for a lot of reasons. Out of gratitude to everyone at MSK. It's an emblem of strength, of will, and luck. Dumb, stubborn courage. And as a reminder that I'm a survivor. Headstrong, unpredictable, and full of love. Ultimately, I got it as a living memorial for the kids that didn't survive the N7 protocol. Kids all around the world that we've lost or will lose. It serves as a constant companion, a physical manifestation of the indelible mark they made upon us all. In the weeks after I got it done, a number of large black scabs formed across the majority of the design, and they itched like mad. After about 10 days and dozens of ineffective applications of lotion, I ended up scratching the scabs right off, and with them, a good amount of the ink. The design became a patchy, uneven mess. Even at the time, I couldn't help but think the symbolism was a bit heavy-handed. Although it was cathartic for me in terms of my personal guilt as a survivor, there was still something fundamentally unsettled in my soul about my cancer experience. A few years later, I caught my mormor, Swedish for mother's mother, staring at my forearm.
Don't you just want to let it fade away? To just move on? Forget about all that nastiness and have a normal life?
I can understand the tendency to want to move on and avoid revisiting the past. Let it fall into the vague, misty yesterdays of memory. And I was happy that she expressed her question the way she did, because it gave me the opportunity to crystallize what this tattoo truly meant to me. Yes, the overall course of my life has been determined by my illness. But I'm not ashamed. I'm not a victim, and I'm not regretful. Although they're often difficult and, let's be perfectly honest, extremely painful nature, these experiences gave my life so much more richness, insight, perspective, so much more compassion for the suffering of others. Incredible encounters with so many beautiful souls. So many blessings. My experiences made me who I am, and I wouldn't change a thing. So, when I got the tattoo a second time, I knew exactly what it meant. I'm a survivor. I'm endlessly thankful, and I'm full of love and laughter. I'm here. I'm alive, and there isn't anybody quite like me. Years later, the ink is as bold and bright as it ever was. Indelible.
My name is Abigail Jefferson, and my essay, 1968, is being narrated by actress Susan Spain and features Marva Hicks, Julius Thomas III, Sora Joy Ross, J.D. Webster, and Venice Eldridge.
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
One day, when the glory comes, it will be ours, it will be ours. Oh, one day, when the war is won, we will be sure, we will be sure. Oh, glory, 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 glory.
It was April 4th, 1968. Michael, my 12-year-old cousin, and I made a plan to trade in our soda bottles at Abe's Corner Store, 2 blocks away from our grandparents' house in Northeast Washington, D.C. Our trade-in got us some Hershey's chocolate, potato chips, a Coke, and some Mary Janes. Yearning to gobble up our goodies, we raced home, only to be immediately distracted by the CBS Evening News.
Good evening. Dr. Martin Luther King, the apostle of nonviolence in the civil rights movement, has been shot to death in Memphis, Tennessee. Dr. King was standing on the balcony of a second-floor hotel room tonight when, according to a companion, a shot was fired from across the street. In the friend's words, the bullet exploded in his face. Police, who have been keeping a close watch over the Nobel Peace Prize winner because of Memphis' turbulent racial situation, were on the scene almost immediately. They rushed the 39-year-old Negro leader to a hospital where he died of a bullet wound in the neck.
The next morning, I went to school, and as I bolted through the classroom door, Mrs. Thornton was making an announcement.
Martin Luther King Jr., our civil rights leader, has been assassinated. There is rioting across our nation, and there's word rioting will break out in D.C. today. So, class will be dismissed early. But before we go, let's take a moment in silence in his memory.
After the bell rang, we grabbed our notebooks and quietly exited the building. As we flooded the playground, I could hear screeching sirens of police cars, fire engines, ambulances, and the sound of running feet. I looked up into the sky and saw large plumes of black smoke billowing onto the canvas of the darkening clouds. It was only 11 a.m., but the sun seemed to have disappeared, and the smoke-filled sky made it appear to be evening. My heart pounded, and my tiny 8-year-old feet took off running. When I arrived home, I darted down the narrow hallway and out onto my back porch, which was always a fun place to hang to watch the boys shoot hoops. I really wanted to kiss one of those cute boys I liked, but I was way too scared. That afternoon, the court was a graveyard, dead silent, but I could still hear sirens. I looked up, entranced by flames roaring from rooftops, spreading ash and cinders all around. I went back inside and was startled to hear somebody pounding on the door. My grandmother stiffened, and she cautiously opened the door. There stood my Uncle Joe, panting hard, holding loaves of bread, milk, and the largest box of detergent I'd ever seen.
Where'd you get all this stuff?
My grandfather, who'd been retreating in the darkness of his bedroom, suddenly appeared.
Oh, no. No, damn it! I don't want no part of this.
Get this stuff out my house.
You heard your father.
Mama, I ain't going back out there. The pigs are locking up our people, throwing them in paddy wagons and tear gassing. The businesses are being burned. We're gonna need these groceries. Stores will all be gone by tomorrow.
My grandmother kept all the stuff. The next morning, Saturday, April 6th, I woke up again to pounding coming from the front door. My grandmother peeped through the blinds and opened it. It was my mom.
I come to pick up my kids. I need them to get out of here. This is one of the neighborhoods that looted and burned the most. My children aren't safe here.
My mom scurried my sister and I out of the house. As I stepped onto the curb, I looked from one end of the block to another. Business after business was burnt. We got into my mother's 1965 blue Chevrolet. We rode around the block. I witnessed the National Guard marching down the streets. Army tanks with snouts erect rolled throughout my community. I noticed that some businesses were untouched, and those buildings had "Soul Brother and Sister" written in white letters on the windows. I knew it meant either a black person owned it or worked there. As we drove around, I asked my mom, "Why did the people riot?" I will always remember her answer.
The people are angry and burning with rage on the inside. All of this is you seeing them burn with rage on the outside. Now the war is not over. Victory isn't won. But we'll fight on.